Good morning, everyone. And Larry Proffit, let me think if I can remember exactly when it was. I think it was 1987 or 88. Elizabeth Lindbergh, somebody that I just met, said I had to come down to this training. And I'm thinking, training? Well, I do like training. And she just talked about it was just going to be something. And so I went down to a Melaleuca meeting. And found out that it was all put together with you. I was just blown away. That was such good stuff. And then later on in 1990, my upline says, you got to go to this thing. It's called Silver Training. It's 2 days long. It's amazing. It'll change your whole life. And I said, well, let me build a business and get a few more people. And he says, no, you got to go to Seattle and go to this amazing, or was it Portland? Maybe it was Portland again. I'm thinking it was Seattle, but anyway, and there was my friend Larry Proffit. I just, oh, wow. And you've been doing this a long time. And I think it'd be really fun. Just this wonderful, awe-inspiring, very sobering responsibility that we have, that what we do matters a whole lot because it can affect other people. And especially if you do it purposefully, which I think you kind of got the idea to do that. And you've affected millions of people. You've changed the world, Larry. You probably thought about that. And I just kind of like to, maybe we could talk about the ripple effect, but how did that come about? Because you were going to be an engineer. Maybe you could tell how you decided to become an engineer, because I know that was careful thought also. So yeah, let's hear the Larry Proffit story.
Yeah, it's getting to that point where I need some Prevagen just to remember some of that story. Hey, yeah, I was born and raised in Evanston, Wyoming, a little town. Got to be a senior in high school, had a scholarship at the University of Wyoming. But my problem was I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I'd taken an aptitude test, and the principal sat me down and says, well, it says here you can be just about anything you want to, except don't be a jeweler. And I didn't want to be a jeweler anyway. So I went down to the University of Wyoming, still I had no clue. I knew I liked math. That was the only thing I knew. And I went down to register, and there were just line after line of these students registering for the college of their choice in Laramie. And so over here was a little short line, and I got in that line, and it was the College of Engineering. And that's how I became an engineer. I'd never seen an engineer. I mean, a little town in Evanston, I don't know that we ever had engineers there. Anyway, I started school, took 3 years off, went down to Peru on a mission for my church, and discovered that I really liked being around people. Came back, finished my engineering degree, and discovered that engineers didn't have much chance to be with people. They worked with tables, and back in those days, it was logarithms and slide rules and all that kind of stuff. So I went to work for General Electric, and as an engineer, and just was not earning enough money. I mean, I was living now in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there were all kinds of things that I'd never even heard of, restaurants I couldn't even name. And I didn't have enough money to participate. And a friend of mine named Ralph Mitchell took me to a meeting, a brand new concept. Back in those days, it was called multi-level marketing, where back in the days when Amway, Mary Kay, and the company that I went with were just starting. And they got me so excited about what the opportunity was. And I signed up. I have to tell you the story because Ralph Mitchell just passed away here 3 months ago, but he took me to that meeting, and at the end of the meeting, it says, turn to the person who invited you and help them get started. And Ralph said to me, well, what do you think? Probably what are you going to do? Well, I didn't even have enough money to get started. I think it was $130 it was going to take. And so I told Ralph, because I was embarrassed, I didn't want him to know that I was broke. So I said, well, I'll think about it, Ralph, and get back to you. And Ralph said to me the thing that I think must have changed my life, because he said, Proffit, let me tell you what they told me. The sands of time lie bleached by the bones of countless thousands who, up on the threshold of a great opportunity, sat down and waited, and while waiting, died. Is that going to be you, Proffit? so, so I didn't want to die. I didn't want to bleach the sands of time with my bones, and so I arranged to get the money, and 2 weeks later started that little business. And about 3 years later, was earning more money part-time than I was full-time at GE, and decided to go full-time. And it totally changed my life. I mean, I had never experienced anything like goal setting and personal growth and personal development. And that's what that company was about. Their founder had the concept that our company was about building people. And the products that we have, the financial opportunity, was just the vehicle that would allow us the freedom to make the choices that would allow us to be all that we could be. So anyway, that was the exciting thing for me. My partner was a person that I had worked with down in Peru named Don Acey. And we built a business, and in one year, 1969, we were named the #1 distributors in the world in that company. And that opened all kinds of doors, because then that company asked me if I would consider taking on some executive responsibility in the corporate level. They sent me to Australia and then to Japan to start their operations in Japan. And my job was to create, develop, carry on the training that we were receiving from that company, and deliver it to all of our distributors on entrepreneurship, management skills, sales skills, and I had found my dream, I guess. It was watching people grow and getting having the thrill of seeing people latch on to opportunities and then get a chance to grow. Now, we found out it wasn't easy. People had to make decisions. They had to, in fact, I had gotten involved with that company in a program called Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale. And the assignment that we had was to listen to one of those 20-minute tapes every single day. And Nightingale said, listen to them for 30 days before you even went on to the next one. And I did that, or 10 of them, and I knew pretty much what he was going to say the next phrase, and they became a part of it. I built them into me, and what that meant was that when I was across the table from somebody or counseling someone about the opportunities, I could draw on that material, the books that I was reading, the book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, The Magic of Thinking Big, all those kinds of things were building into me from a concept that owner had. He said, well, first of all, he believed that concept that without vision, the people perish. And his concept was build your vision, and your vision will build you. And so that's what was happening with that. The vision grew and grew, captivated me. And then some things happened. That owner of that company was killed in a plane crash. He changed management. I was in Japan when this was happening. We had run across a young man by the name of Mr. Isamu Masuda, who he was a desk clerk in a transportation company there in Japan, and he had a son born with some real severe problems, his first child, and needed extra money. We were doing meetings in Miyazaki, Japan, and Mr. Masuda was in that interview and grabbed on, became one of the leaders in that company, and then they expanded to America. And when they did, he decided to hold an international convention in Brazil, where the largest contingent of Japanese outside of Japan lived. And this was probably the thing that sealed for me that I was in the right area, because As we got ready to leave, my wife and I were there. Mr. Masuda came up to me and he said, Mr. Proffit, do you remember what you told me when you interviewed me in Miyazaki, Japan, and all those years ago? And I couldn't even remember interviewing him. He says, I said, no. And he reached into his pocket, pulled out a 3x5 card. It was laminated in plastic, and I couldn't read any of it. It was all in Japanese, except I could read the bottom of it. It said Larry Proffit. And so the translator translated it. And what it said was, in order to become the person you wish to become, you must first think, talk, walk, and act as if you already are that person. Well, he said that had changed his life. And that's what had started him in heading up that particular company. Well, I was thrilled, but then I was also humbled because I realized that wasn't Larry Proffit. That was what I had learned from Earl Nightingale. And evidently, when I had interviewed him, he said something that triggered that was already in my computer between my ears. And I was able to give him that counsel that he said changed his life. And I realized then, and Dave, you just mentioned the ripple effect, because what I realized since then, it's amazing what we can do, even a smile, a hug, or something that will pick somebody up at a moment where they need it, because we were impressed to say or do or act in such a way that caused some inspiration to occur in them, and they may never even recognize what happened. It was much the same with what Ralph Mitchell did for me. Until just recently, Dave, you'd never heard of Ralph Mitchell, and yet he changed your life because of what he told me in that very first meeting with him in that opportunity. And since then, what happened for me as a result of what I was learning, I was able to transform those experiences into how I was raising my family, how I was going to recover from opposition. I mean, our oldest child, and the year that we were the #1 distributors in the world, our oldest child died of leukemia at 5 years of age. And that was devastating. But because of what we had been learning, because of our faith in our gospel teachings, our scriptures, able to pick ourselves up and proceed and know that this was just a part of life. Those statements we've all heard, it's not important what happens to you, it's how you react to what happens to you that's important. Those kinds of things allowed us to overcome all kinds of obstacles. In fact, we read the book, The Road Less Traveled, where in that book he says, life is hard, and it's supposed to be that way. And that really is amazing how it can change your philosophy when you have some of those obstacles. There's just so many experiences that happened as we grew that experience. Well, what happened is about 10 or 11 years ago, I retired, and I was enjoying easy life here in St. George, Utah. Able to visit grandkids. We now have 35 grandkids, and we've got now 5 great-grandchildren. And I realized that I had been trained in multi-level marketing, and at first there were 2, Pat and Larry, and then there were 10, and then there were 35, and all of a sudden I realized that's multi-level marketing. And some of my legs are more productive than others. so I was getting great training, just living life. It was a part of life. But we also learned some things like even raising our children and the experience with the companies about what freedom really is. Dave, I know you've enjoyed this expression. It says freedom is greatest when the boundaries are clearly defined. And that has been a mantra for me in setting up agreements and opportunities where we know ahead of time what the expectations are. And those are the boundaries that we live that will help us develop the integrity and the personal growth that allows us to be an inspiration to people just the way we live our lives. And I think that has been one of the biggest things that I've learned. But I've also just the association with Dave Johnson. Valerie the opportunity to be around them. And so when Dave gave me a call, says, hey, there's something exciting going on, and explained the Nirvana opportunity to me, and the simplicity of the compensation plan and how you can be paid weekly just simply for helping people get started in their lives, and they've got money immediately that can create income for them, rather than waiting until they've got an organization of 100, 300,000 people that's creating income for them. And a product that you can believe in that really makes a difference. Boy, there are so many of those companies that have come to me with their friends of mine, saying, hey, you ought to get involved. Ours is better than theirs, and here's why. But it never piqued my interest. It never grabbed my core. That what I really enjoyed doing was having a product that would make a big difference in people's lives, and in some cases even save their lives. And so the Nirvana opportunity opened up a whole new realm of activity for me, and I guess it's called coming out of retirement. Anyway, I'm back visiting with people. We're having a meeting tonight here in St. George. Thane Shively's coming down from Idaho, and he did a meeting for a group of our folks up in Salt Lake City last night. And the beat goes on, I think the song says. So I'm excited to be a part of it, and especially to have association again with Dave and Valerie Johnson, and just wonderful people, and relationships seem to be what it's about. And this business has given me the opportunity to really get involved in some really important relationships. I have a granddaughter which just has been diagnosed with Hodgkin's sarcoma, with her left lung growth the size of a football, and 20 years old, just newly married about 3 months ago. And knowing that I'm involved with an organization that really is concerned about people's health, not just having a product to sell, has really had meaning, has meaning for me, because all of a sudden I'm finding there's a lot of people that have stories and that are hurting and need some extra help. So thanks, Dave. Thanks for getting me involved. I really appreciate it.
So I'm just really delighted that we have reconnected. It just it really is fun. And one of the things I really like also, I think probably your famous thing, and perhaps the most powerful thing, is what you told Isamu Masuda that you'd heard from Earl Nightingale, and it is that idea, the act as if, what would you like to become? Well, act that part right now. Think, act, conduct yourself as if that person that you wish to become. That's so powerful. And I love your freedom is greatest, where the boundaries are clearly defined. And one of my very favorite thoughts is leadership. That wonderful opportunity that we have to influence another person to do something, and hopefully something wonderful that they'll do that they wouldn't have done but by your good influence. And you say it so well, and I've never heard anybody else say it, that leadership is the enthusiastic communication of your vision, because that's what a lot of this is all about, is having a wonderful product. That's what brought me to the dance also, and it's fun to talk about. But then what gets it really going is having a vision. What can we do with this? And so this has got everything in place: a product, amazing leadership, good business experience. In fact, when you were brand new in network marketing, you showed a really smart businessman. He sat down and made a pie on a piece of paper and put all of the components that were necessary. Could you just maybe talk about that just a little bit, and what brought you onto your encore career?
Well, and there's another thing that happened just this past week. I attended a meeting of my church and heard a sermon, a sharing of experience. The guy was talking about he had just bought a puppy, and he didn't want him to get out of the yard, and so he built a 3-foot fence around his yard that would keep the pup in the yard. And now the puppy grew, and he's now 2 or 3 years old, and he decides he needs a bigger fence. And so now he builds a 6-foot fence to keep the puppy in. He puts the pup, who's now a full-grown dog, he says that pup leaped over the fence into his arms, was so excited. He got over that 6-foot fence, but the 3-foot fence, still, he would not leave it. And his point was, how many of us have created the 3-foot fence when we were younger? We've listened to what we can and can't do. We believe it, when we really could jump over the 6-foot fence if we'd only get rid of the barriers. And so when it comes to looking at who we are, who we can become, we really sell ourselves short. And the fellow who was talking about what makes the great opportunity, his pie was, he says, you look at 3 or 4 things. One of them is you look at the product. Will it make a difference? You look at the compensation. Is it going to pay what it needs to pay? Is there a program for personal growth and personal development involved? And is there a way for a training where people can learn who they really are? And it's funny because as I've gone through the years looking at those things that make up the pie, you can really evaluate any business. One of them is, what is the philosophy of the company? Do they have a reason for being in business? I used to do consulting work for people who wanted to get involved in their own businesses. And one of the questions that I would ask, I would go interview the president or the founder of those companies. And the question that I'd ask them is, what is your purpose? What is your purpose for being in business? Now, I remember the puzzled look that they get on their face. One of them just says, well, to make a lot of money, I guess. And that is not a good enough purpose. That was not the reason for being. The money could be a vehicle, but if that was the purpose, the company was going to be doomed to failure. Some of them will last a few years, but most of those companies will fail because they don't have a good enough reason for being in business. In fact, that's another one of those things that made a difference for me when the mentor in that first company told us, he says, if you're not successful, the reason is because you didn't have a good enough reason to succeed. And he says, I don't care what your reason is, just find one. Boy, I tell you, that's the big difference with this. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities out there. But when you have a reason that rings your bell, I mean, it goes to your core values, that's one of the biggest pieces of that pie. And if you don't have that kind of a reason, when the obstacles come, you wither and die on the vine. It's a simple thing. But I think that's something that we all have to really get down. And it doesn't matter whether it's business, whatever our church affiliation, whatever our families are. There's people who are abandoning their families because they don't have a good enough reason to help them over the obstacles. Because whatever we do, as Peck said in his book, life is hard, and it's meant to be that way. And we've got to have a good enough reason to jump over the 3-foot fence, or we'll never get free. Freedom is greatest when the boundaries are clearly defined. Well, 3-foot fences are not the boundaries. And we start to realize that the biggest boundaries are the limitations we place on ourselves. That's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned is there is nothing we can't do because we were put on this planet to be somebody. It isn't just us alone. We do have a creator that wants us to be rich in all areas of our life. And I think that's the philosophy that we're really about. And that's what really strikes people's core value. They start to realize deep inside that they're a lot more than who they thought they were when they first looked at themselves. And I think that's one of our challenges, is to help people build their vision of who they are and what their potential is to change lives. And it's like you said, you may not even be the person that talked to the person who talked to the person who talked to the person, but the ripple effect continues on and makes a difference.
Oh, that's amazing stuff. And one of the things I was just kind of thinking as we begin our encore career together, that that really is what keeps us alive. And I remember watching a little seminar, and it just talked about how to stay alive, and not just add years to that life, but add life to those years. And one of the really defining things was that people who have a massively transformative purpose, if they really wake up in the morning with something they want to do, and actually can clearly articulate it, that they will live many years longer than somebody that just wakes up and think, well, another day, wonder what I'm going to do today. And so I'm so grateful to have this because it does make you more alive. People that are doing something. I remember this phrase about Warren Buffett, who doesn't need the money, but he loves to go to work. So much so that he says that every morning I tap dance to work.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that he's still living in the same house he started with all those years ago, because the money wasn't what was important to him. It was the being and what he was able to help develop.
Yeah, if it was, well, I'm doing this to make a profit, that would have been satisfied a long time ago. And exactly. And yet when you do something like this, one of the things I think is just really fun about this business is it's centered around products that really do something. And to even justify having a business, you have to have some type of product or service. And then the best product or service is something that solves problems for people. Well, we can definitely do that. But one of the things I really love is in that pie graph that you mentioned, it does talk about for an opportunity, you need to be paid. And I just love being in a company that pays people well, that appreciates them. And oh my goodness, you can be pretty good. In fact, you've been doing this for what is it? Maybe up above 50 years. You got to check and what wasn't it kind of a thrill in a way? I love Rabbi Lapin. He says that income is a certificate of service rendered, and so you're starting to get some report cards again that you're doing some good stuff.
Yeah, that's really what it is. It's fact. It's funny because Dave, as you're talking about that, one of the problems with the phrase coming out of retirement. I mean, when you're having an enjoyable life playing tennis and golfing and visiting kids and active in your church, what came across to me in the last 2 weeks especially was another one of the Nightingale things that really jumped out at me, because what I really discovered, one of the things that he says, and he's quoting one of the famous philosophers some of you will recognize, he says, no life gets anywhere unless it's focused, dedicated, and disciplined. And that's what I've discovered. Even though I'm retired, I'm enjoying life, I still need to get focused on what it is I want to do each day. I need to be dedicated to doing it, because it's too easy to just let the phone sit there and not make a call. And discipline, that means getting up on and not just laying around. There's some things that I've had to reapply that have given me new significance, if you will, but the same principles apply. I have to decide what it is I want, and then do whatever it takes to make that happen, because it doesn't happen without taking some action. You've heard that expressed, that faith is just an expression of action. And if you don't take action, you really didn't have faith anyway. And that has been a mantra of mine for years. I'm getting a chance to reapply it on a daily basis, and but it's exciting. It does bring vibrations back into the old body that you forget were there.
Well, you're younger than you were a month ago. I'll just say that, and it's fun to have purpose. It's fun to have something exciting to do that you want to get out of bed and you got something to do. All of a sudden, purpose. It's hard to live without purpose. I think you really can't be fully happy unless you're in the process of accomplishment. And so anyway, just really, really thrilled to be working close with you. And any final thoughts you'd like to add or advice to somebody that maybe just met you the first time through listening to this? What would you tell them?
Well, it really comes back. I think we've said it over and over again, but it's one of those things that if you really want to be happy, you've got to be able to contribute to the lives of other people. It is about service. The purpose of life, man, is that he might have joy, but you soon discover that the only real way of having true joy in life is when you are in the service of your fellow man. And those of us who find a way to be of service, to really make a difference in the lives of other people, that brings the most sense of fulfillment and satisfaction that I think our Creator wanted us to have from the beginning. It says, love one another and be kind to those around you. And especially with what's going on in our world today, there's enough challenges to help us realize that those are not just platitudes, they're principles that are sometimes hard to live, but oh, do they make a difference in the long run? And I think that's probably, if I could leave a message on my tombstone, it would be, man is that he might have joy and he made a difference in the life of somebody. I like Ziegler's statement. He said it like, he says, you are somebody to somebody. And knowing that is really a key thing. If whoever it is, live your life so that when they look at you, they can say that person was who he said he was.
That's awesome. And I've heard this, and I'll say it personally of you. I like me best when I'm around you, Larry.
Yeah, I love that. I love that phrase. I like me best. And this is really true when I'm around you. Those people who will help us understand who we really are and encourage us. We love them forever. Somebody said, you may not remember what they said, but you'll remember how you felt when you were around them. And I think that's one of the most satisfying things about this kind of a business for us is we can really be a game changer. And that makes all of us feel a little bit better, knowing that we did something more than what we thought we were capable of doing.
Thank you. Well, we got to work anyway. Why not do work that really matters? And what's so fun is being able to be part of creating a new team, a new culture, and just doing something that really does matter, that can have some huge impact. So, Larry, sure love you. Thanks. And
well, thank you.
It's a new day out there. So action.
Meet you on the Joy Highway someplace. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Everything you want or can do so often is just on the other side of a telephone. So pick up a phone and call somebody. Take care, everybody. Thanks.
Bye-bye.